listening to the Virtual CISO Podcast, providing the best insight on information security and security IT advice to business leaders everywhere.
Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Virtual CISO Podcast. With you, as always, John Verry, host. And with me today, no one but me. Today is November 11th, 2022. And over the course of the last couple of months, I've had increasingly a number of conversations with clients where they're expressing a concern with regards to budget and the economy. And I've been having a lot more conversations about how do we remain secure and compliant in a down economy. I've shared some ideas with folks and thought it would be a good idea to share them on the podcast. So roughly I've got 10 ideas here. And they break down into three fundamental things. We still want to remain strategic. We still want to be efficient. And we want to be HR flexible. So let's talk about being strategic. If you do not have an information security strategy, I would suggest that you develop one. A 3-year vision or a 3-year strategy is very valuable because it provides you a framework to vet every decision and every investment against. And what this does is it allows you to ensure that every step that you take is fully aligned with your long-term information security and business strategy. In a down economy, you can't really afford to make a wrong turn. That costs you time and money. So ensuring that we've got a security strategy to guide everything that we're doing is going to set us up for success. Part of an information security strategy, and the second idea, is to make sure that we align our information or your information security program with what I'm going to call open trusted frameworks. So think about things like ISO 27001 and OWASP and CVSS guidance and good NIST guidance, NISA guidance, Center for Internet Security. These are all fantastic forms of open trusted guidance on how to optimize your information security program. And optimizing your information security program optimizes your organizational resilience. The value of trusted frameworks, they immediately raise the security knowledge of your security team by leveraging proven principles. We don't end up in a situation where we're reinventing security. There's formulas that have been figured out that work well. It also ensures that your team doesn't miss something, miss a key element. Effectively, it's the checklist manifesto. These frameworks provide a good checklist to ensure that nothing is missed. I mean, there is a reason that, brain surgeons and pilots use checklists. Open trusted frameworks, one of the other advantages is that it will help you ensure that your security products seamlessly interoperate. That simplifies operations, it reduces costs. And again, in a down economy, we can't afford to make investments and then find out that our investments don't play nice together. Trusted frameworks also maximize the pool of available resources. We're going to talk about the HR challenges. We know that there are shortages of good people. And when you work with trusted frameworks, you increase the pool of available resources that are going to be available to you to help you maintain your cybersecurity program. Again, staying away from proprietary standards provides resilience. We don't want to be reliant on a single proprietary product or vendor. It'll position your company as an industry leader. And the other advantage of trusted frameworks is by aligning with a trusted framework, you're going to be in a position where you're going to have highly valued attestation. So something like ISO 27001, gold standard for information security. If you hand someone an ISO 27001 certificate, they're going to be excited to get that, and it's going to have the intended effect. So that's the idea of these open trusted frameworks as part of your strategy. As part of our strategy, we need to continue to make what I'm going to refer to as necessary security investments. It is tempting in a down economy to cut corners wherever we can. What we want to do is if we're going to make investments, we want to make them judiciously, of course. I look at this as what I'm going to call a value preservation or a risk mitigation play. If you think about the average cost of a breach in an SMB being about $110,000, in a time of economic downturn, having some type of an unfortunate situation of that nature and the associated loss of customers would put us in an even worse position. So my suggestion would be continue to make the investments that need to be made in security. Make them judiciously, of course, but let's make sure we do that. And then perhaps a zig where I zag strategy, or a zig where the market is zagging strategy, is I see some of the better run organizations making additional investments into security in a judicious manner in economic downturns. Why? Because if you think about continuing to make the investments that we're making is continuing to mitigate risk, right? I think of that as being value preservation. Making additional investments is the idea of adding a value creation component, right? Good security, provable security and compliance as a business enabler. It's something which facilitates selling. And in a down economy, not many other companies are going to be investing. So it is a chance to competitively differentiate, right? To move your organization forward while other organizations are either standing still or sliding backwards. Another justification for this is that in a down market, you need to win a higher percentage of the business that is there. There will be business there. It might be 10% less, it might be 20% or 30% less. What you need to do is you need to win a higher percentage to maintain, your organization in good health. And then one last thing is, as an added advantage, is when you go through economic downturns, and I was through the 2008 to 2010 or 2008 to 2011, whatever it was, downturn. What you see is that during a downturn, weaker competitors get weaker and they disappear from the market. And if we've actually made the right investments when we come out of the back end of this downturn, assuming that there is one, you're going to be a lot better positioned, from a competitive standpoint. Moving towards the idea of being efficient, one of the things which we see consistently is people don't fully capitalize on the security investments they've already made. So what I would suggest is make sure you use what you pay for but are not currently using. A great example of that is Microsoft 365. I think Microsoft 365 is a remarkable bargain, and they provide a remarkable amount of capability. Think about things like Security and Compliance Center, the Sentinel SIEM that comes in there, Defender EDR. They've got multi-factor authentication, built in. They've got DLP capabilities, MDM capabilities. There's Defender for Cloud. It would be a rare occurrence that we would work with a client that has the vast majority of that technology deployed optimally. In fact, very often they've got other components deployed, other SIMs, other endpoint protection software, and they're not really taking advantage of what they're paying for. So that would be something I would definitely aspire to in a down market. And then also use what you're already paying for that's not yet fully, I'm going to say, configured or being used correctly. What we see in the marketplace is that most organizations are able to make OpEx investments into security components, but fail to continue to make make CapEx investments into security products, but often don't fully recognize the OpEx that is necessary, that being time and perhaps training for folks to actually use these tools well. I always tell a story of a client of ours that was using one of the better scanners. I believe it was Qualys. And we came in to do a penetration test of a very, very sensitive environment. It was a governmental entity. They actually ran vulnerability assessments in this environment on a weekly basis, which is unusual, and patched everything that they found. And we started the pen test, and the CISO was very confident that they were going to fly through the pen test. It was an attestation requirement that they had to have the pen test. We conducted the pen test, and we're 15 minutes into the pen test, and we're just destroyed the environment, right? We own everything. The environment was remarkably insecure. And they were like, how is this possible? We run one of the world's best scanners on a weekly basis. We went and looked at the implementation of the scanner, and somebody had clicked on a button that said, enable fast scans, because who wouldn't want to enable fast scans? But what enabling fast scans did was disabled it scanning the vast majority of the open ports. And, they had intentionally hidden a lot of their services on what we call ephemeral or higher ports, non-standard ports. So they were only scanning the standard ports, so they weren't aware that all of these services that were running on the upper ports were actually highly vulnerable and had been in that state for a long period of time. They were using the products incorrectly. The folks hadn't been properly trained. So we see the same thing with SIMs. If you've implemented any form of log management, any type of security information event management, these products are great when they're turned on and out of the box and they're properly configured. But over time, as drift occurs in your environment, if somebody is not consistently carrying and feeding for that SIM, it's no longer going to be working well. So again, you've already made good capital investments. Make sure that you're making the ongoing investments into those tools to take advantage of them. Another strategy that we've seen, and we've done successfully on the business side, right, is consolidate your vendor list. In an economic downturn, your vendors are struggling as well. At the time of this recording, I saw an article that roughly 36 major cybersecurity vendors have all cut their workforces by 10 to 20% ahead of this downturn. So what I would suggest is you find those that are your partner, not just vendors, and grow your work with them. That has a couple of advantages. One, managing fewer vendors saves time. It saves time on vendor due diligence. It saves time of your folks in interacting with multiple different forms of parties and coordinating work across multiple entities. And it saves time on that vendor management component we talked about. The other advantage is you're likely to get better pricing on larger blocks of works or larger licensing deals. Part of being efficient is what I'm going to say is leveraging technology intelligently. We've seen a rapid growth in tools, and some of the cooler, newer tools are leveraging machine learning and artificial intelligence, and they can be valuable in reducing your operational burden. So what I would suggest is you sit down with your team and figure out where they're spending time that might be better addressed by technology. As an example, if you've got a team that's doing threat hunting or managing a SIM SOC operation for you, can you leverage some of the newer attack surface digital risk platforms to reduce your risk profile and reduce or even eliminate some of the threat hunting activities that are going on or dark web monitoring that you're doing? You might be able to leverage that same tool to reduce your third-party supply chain risk by using that same tool to monitor the attack surface of all your key vendors. That in an economic downturn might be even more valuable, because if we think about the fact that they might be cutting their budgets and doing a little bit less, us doing a little bit more to make sure that their security posture, if their security posture were to go down, we'd know about it, would be help, because as we all know, a significant percentage of breaches occur through our third parties. You might be able to use a tool like Lupio or Vendict to reduce the burden of security questionnaires. We have some clients that are processing 1 to 2 security questionnaires per week, and these things, can take hours of a person's time to actually do. Very often 4 hours of time to do. We're finding that some of these tools, if they're used well, can reduce that burden by 60% or greater. So what that does is it frees up those resources to maybe do something else, or maybe reduces your overall burden for resourcing. You might be to use a tool like our Policy Automator tool to dynamically generate information security policies aligned with your exact requirements. That could be beneficial, especially this year and next year as we move from 27001:2013 to 27001:2022. There's going to be a lot of policy rewriting and tuning that might be necessary. So again, leveraging technology intelligently to reduce that burden can help. You might be to use a tool like Big ID or Secure IT or some of the newer privacy tools. Privacy's getting hot. You may be in a position where you're having to deal with privacy in an economic downturn with less people. Some of these tools are really cool in terms of automating data discovery, automating generation of ROPAs, your records processing activities, and can even provide support in managing and servicing data subject access requests. So the idea here is, can we replace human effort with machine effort, right? Using some type of an expert system, providing economic benefit to us. Closely related is, seek to what I'm going to refer to as operationalize and automate. And when we manage a cybersecurity program, there are literally, for most organizations, 100 plus tasks that need to happen, some combination of annually, biannually, quarterly, weekly, monthly, and daily. Annually we're reviewing policies. Biannually we might be doing risk assessments. Quarterly we've got ISMS committee meetings. Monthly we've got entitlement reviews for critical systems. We're doing vulnerability assessments. Whatever these activities might be. Increasingly we're seeing clients automate these so that they happen, I use the term automagically. So it's not something that we need to think about. There's a higher degree of effort on the front side, to build this master, we often call it a compliance calendar, a master cybersecurity program task list. But then once we put that into some type of a application, it will happen automatically. It'll alert us when we need to do something. It'll alert us when people are not doing things. Many of them can do things like escalation. So this allows you to be much more efficient and, I'm going to say, do more with less. The other advantage is it also codifies institutional knowledge into an expert system, which allows you to do the same task with lower price resources, which can also be beneficial during an economic downturn. That's the fundamental principle of McDonald's, right? Create highly defined processes, and that allows you to reduce the cost of the personnel required to run them. It also provides an insane level of resilience. One of the things you're going to have to be concerned about during the economic downturn is either letting people go or people moving somewhere else. And you don't want that codified institutional knowledge to walk out the door if that codified institutional knowledge is codified into an expert system, into a GRC platform, into a help desk ticketing system, or some automation mechanism, that you're not having your institutional knowledge walk out the door. This is especially important in more complex environments where you've got compliance with lots of standards, or you're doing multiple audits per year, if you've got a heavy vendor due diligence burden. In those instances, I would suggest that you look at some of the GRC platforms that are out there, that we commonly refer to as governance, risk, and compliance platforms. There are a number, too numerous to mention. We've got a platform that we call Oscar, which is quite good. You can think of other programs like Tugboat Logic is a very nice platform. Hyperproof is another very nice platform. There are literally dozens of these. However, in a simpler environment, you may not need to make any additional investment or add any more tools. For years, before we were using our own Oscar platform, we ran our ISO 27001 information security management system on a combination of SharePoint with workflows, Microsoft Teams, and we used Rike, a project management tool. I've got clients that are running their cybersecurity programs using Asana. I've seen multiple clients do it with help desk software, something like a ServiceNow implementation. So there's lots of different ways that we can do this, but you will be very happy if you're sitting in a management position to know that your program's operationalized and that you've got a single pane of glass to be able to look at. So that way, in a downturn when people are busy, or in a downturn when you're short people, you know exactly where you stand. Pursuant to that, and kind of a follow-on to that, is you might need to consider fractional support. We're seeing this as increasingly a viable business model for many organizations. So consider using a virtual chief information security or a fractional CISO. You hear different terms. If you only need expensive skill sets in the advisory and governance domains, occasionally, in that instance, it's sort of like the equivalent of paying for an architect's salary when you need an HVAC contractor, or you need a painter, or you need somebody to run wiring in your building. So you can get, this can work quite well. So as an example, we had an organization that we were their virtual CISO for about 2 years, helped them correct some challenges within their environment. They were a small client, relatively small in the investment advisory space, and they exited with $1 billion valuation. And one of the things that they were complimented on was their information security posture. And they were able to do that at an extremely competitive rate over a multi-year period. You can also use fractional support to offload lower level tasks from your more expensive advisory, governance, more strategic personnel. So if you've already got those people, but they're stuck doing things like vendor due diligence questionnaires where they're sending out the reviews and dealing with that, or they're answering security questionnaires, or they're spending an inordinate amount of their time doing compliance management, validating that the processes that need to occur are occurring, making sure that the artifacts the processes are producing are the ones that need to be produced. You can often offload that to, often they call that virtual security teaming. So that's another good strategy for either getting the support that you need but don't currently have, or unburdening the more strategic advisory folks in your organization to fulfill those roles, and outsourcing those lower level roles. And then the last thing, around the same HR issue is trying to both attract and retain great talent. Security is about properly architected controls executing effectively on a consistent and repeatable basis. In order for that to happen, you need the right products. We talked a lot about that, but you really, most importantly, need the right people. Right now, that is a hard formula hard needle to thread, so to speak. There is definitively a shortage of good information security talent. It's hard to find these people. It's hard to afford these people. Maybe the economic downturn will help a little bit in terms of salary, but we've seen salary escalation, and the people are expensive. And then it's hard to retain these people. The average time that folks stay in a spot is 18, 19 months. So how do we retain great talent? What the industry says, and talking to lots of good people in the industry, and what all of the data says, is it's really not just all about the comp. Money is definitely an important part of it, and you're going to have to make the investments from a dollars perspective. But there are a lot of other things that are important. I talked to Deidre Diamond on this podcast about inclusive cultures. That is definitively a way to keep people happy. I think we've got a very inclusive culture and a very healthy culture, and we do very well in terms of retaining people at a much longer retention period than the industry average. We're not perfect. We have turnover as well. But I do think culture is an important part of that. I think an awareness of the overall stress levels in information security and being aware of that and accounting for that is also critical. I just read there was a global study of 1,100 cybersecurity professionals by Mimecast that just came out, and it found that 1/3 are currently considering leaving their role in the next year, 2 years due to stress. Many of them were talking about leaving information security as a discipline. So think about how viable and vibrant and how much job security you have in information security. And the stress levels are so high that people are talking about getting out of the field. And I don't think that's going to get better if we do have an economic downturn, anything worse than we're having right now, because economic downturns increase people's stress level independent of just work, right? When the economy's down, consumer confidence index is down, people are not feeling as good. They feel that stress more. And now that work level stress coupled with that is going to make things even worse. So I think that's something that you need to be aware of. Hopefully these 10 ideas were valuable, and we got some good stuff in a relatively short period of time. If there's anything that I can do to help you, or if you need any additional information or any additional advice on dealing with remaining provably secure and compliant, please let us know.